Bill Gates hates it. Elon Musk wants to escape to Mars from it, yet Google has made it open source. What is it that we're talking about? Artificial intelligence, of course.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 8th episode of the Broken Speaker Podcast. My name is Greg, and I am joined by my co-host and brother, Brian. Today we are talking about artificial intelligence. What does it mean for us humans? When will convergence come for us all? Join us as we cover some of the most recent AI developments. But before we get there, let's talk about something AI can never truly appreciate. Beer. Brian, what are you drinking today?
So today I have stayed in the northern Colorado area, and I am drinking a high hops beer called the Honeyed One. And fun fact, and it says it right here on the can, this contains no honey.
Well, that doesn't make much sense, does it?
Right, I don't know. It looked interesting. It's called the Honeyed One, but it's an American red as sweet as honey, is what they describe it as. They say that it is good with camping, climbing, hiking, friends, disc golf, tree houses, and fishing. So I'm very excited to try this. I'm looking forward to it a lot. Greg, what are you drinking?
So today I have Lip Lock Cherry Stout from Atwater Brewery, born in Detroit and kind of brewed there. We've been to the brewery in downtown Detroit, actually. One of the brew houses had some beer and some food. It was good. It's a good place. But the Lip Lock Cherry Stout is a malt beverage brewed with cherry concentrate, 6% alcohol by volume, 16 IBUs, and the only thing this says it's pairs with is significant others and partners in crime. Which I don't really... Well, I guess I have a partner in crime. You can be considered a partner in crime, I suppose.
Yeah, we're partner in crime.
Okay, so there we go. That's what I'm pairing it with today. But I guess I'm hoping it's smooth and not hoppy, so we'll see how that goes. And I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, something cool about mine, too, I just read on here, the ingredients. And usually beer doesn't have an ingredient list because you generally know what goes into your beer. But it says water from the Kashlapooter River, which is our local river, in-house cultured yeast, and then hops grown on site. So this brewery actually has hops that they grow on site, and then they make their beer out of it, which is kind of unique and kind of cool.
Yeah, it must not be easy to do it that way, right?
No, hops are very hard to make or to grow, and they generally grow better at higher latitudes, like Idaho and Oregon and Washington are like the perfect areas to grow hops. So the fact that they're in Colorado, which is considered mostly a desert, and they're growing hops, it is very, very unique. I don't think I've ever seen a brewery be able to say that they use their own hops that they grow.
Well, that's cool. I might have to try that one when I come back to Colorado eventually.
Absolutely. We can take a trip out to the brew house. But now, I think we need a little bit more enrichment in our daily beer lives. So a little bit more facts. And this time, we're going to go down under, Greg. We're going to travel down to Australia. And I think one of the biggest things you can do, or the best things you can do when you travel to any country, is know how to order a beer in that country. Because, like when you and I have traveled to Europe before, ordering beer over in Europe is not exactly the same as ordering beer in the United States. Am I right?
I mean, it's kind of the same. You just order a beer. What's different about it in Australia?
Well, so if you go down to Australia and you say, "Hey, can I get a large beer?" they're going to have no idea what you're saying. If you go down to Australia and you're in Western Australia, the Northern Territory, Queensland, or New South Wales, and you want a large beer, you got to call it a schooner of beer.
Oh, wait. Okay, well, hold up. Say that again.
A schooner of beer.
A schooner of beer. All right.
Yep. And if you're in Victoria, you just call it a pint. Same with South Australia. You just call a large beer a pint. Now, in Western Australia and New South Wales, a small beer is called a middy. In the Northern Territory of Australia, it's called a handle. Queensland and Victoria, they call it a pot. And in South Australia, they call their small beer a schooner.
Okay, now, can you enlighten me on what the difference between a large and a small beer? Can you give me fluid ounces?
So generally, a large beer is going to be the size of an English pint. So it's going to be about 1.2 U.S. pints, and U.S. pints are about 16 ounces. So a little bit larger.
Okay.
A small beer is going to be just under 1 U.S. pint.
Okay, so it's all the same size, but it's just different ways to say it, is what you're telling me.
Exactly. But there's other things that are different in ordering beer when you go to Australia. For instance, if you're looking for a smaller amount, like if you're just looking for a little taster of something, you can order a 7. And a 7 is basically 7 ounces of beer. So like a half a beer, a small beer. Now, if you don't know exactly what you want, you go to a brewery here in the United States and you might ask for a flight, right? I know you've had some flights before. I've had many flights before.
Yeah, it's just a sampling of whatever the brewery has to offer.
Right? Well, what is that flight generally served on, Greg?
Paddle. I don't know.
And that is what Australians call a flight. They call it a paddle. So
okay, well, it makes sense. I like it.
And this is my favorite of all of the different sayings that you can go through and actually see. If you can't make it to your local bar in the Outback, you can always stop by the Bottle-O and pick up some tinnies.
So cans?
Well, you got the tinnies right. That's cans. The Bottle-O is a drive-through beer store.
It has to be drive-through?
It has to be drive-through, but apparently is very popular in Australia.
Okay.
I don't know about you, but I just think that it'd be great to go down to Australia. I feel like it could fit into this culture pretty well.
Yeah.
But it might get a little confusing at first.
I mean, if it wasn't for the wildlife trying to murder you, then yeah, I'd love to go to Australia.
But kangaroos, Greg. Kangaroos and koalas.
Giant spiders and sharks.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, everything's trying to kill you down there. I mean, even the plants look like they're trying to kill you.
Yeah.
So, but, I mean, also, did you hear that they got a new Crocodile Dundee movie coming out?
I heard it was a hoax, Brian.
Nope, I don't think it's a hoax. I've seen 3 trailers for it so far.
Oh.
Yep, and it's got the guy from Eastbound and Down, the Kenny Powers guy.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And Chris Hemsworth is also going to be one of the characters in there. So I've seen trailers with both of them in it. So I don't think it's a hoax.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll have to look for those.
I wonder if they're going to use correct beer terminology. I'm going to watch for that now.
They'll probably use the American ignoramus terms where they just yell shrimp on the Barbie and, all that stuff.
Well, isn't Hemsworth, aren't all those guys from Australia? I'm pretty sure they are.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'd have to look that up.
But okay, so I think there's a possibility that they are from Australia. So that's just an interesting thing. He might be the perfect actor to have in that role. But in any case, I think it's about time we move on to our main segment and talk about this topic. It's on everybody's mind in some form or another of artificial intelligence.
Now, it really isn't on your mind. It's on a computer's mind because it's a computer making it work. Which
that's true.
Yes. So I guess to start this out, I planned to do a game and to kind of demonstrate artificial intelligence and how we work with it in our daily lives. Now, it wasn't, I guess you could say, true artificial intelligence, but it didn't pan out exactly. And the reason why is because it worked flawlessly, and I thought it was going to have a lot of problems. So I'll give a little bit of background. Our podcast for the last few episodes has been posted on YouTube. And so when you post any video on YouTube, it kind of gives you the option to listen to captions. You can either set captions yourself, or you can listen to captions that were auto-generated by Google's machine learning or artificial intelligence, however you want to spin it. Essentially, a machine listened to the podcast and created captions for us. Now, I listened back to our podcasts, and the other day when I listened to them, there were some funny excerpts where it didn't quite get what we were talking about, and it was essentially messing up the words and making hilarious sentences. And I was going to read a few sentences and see if Brian could figure out what they exactly were relating to, but that didn't pan out because I went back today to listen to to read the captions and come up with a few sentences that were funny, and they were all spot on perfect. So when I had just published the video, it was essentially rough, and it just kind of did what it could to show you something that resembled what we were talking about, and they were funny. Now, after a few days, it's listened to the podcast itself. I don't know how it exactly works, but it's come up with flawless captions for our conversations.
So what you're saying is that basically it refined itself over a period of time.
Yes. Now, it's not entirely artificial intelligence. It's more machine learning. But it's kind of like this stuff is already working in our world right now to help us and do different things. Now, some people don't think it's helping us, but that was just one of the examples I was coming up with to actually show what, I guess, artificial intelligence could be doing in our world.
No, that's actually kind of cool. Like, I think that that's a big part about artificial intelligence is because the starting point, or what a lot of people believe is the starting point of artificial intelligence, is machine learning and trying to incorporate that into different tasks. And eventually, the machine learning will turn into its thinking on its own, like way down the line. But it's got to start somewhere. And so this is kind of, I guess, the base level of what you could use to create artificial intelligence in a way. It's not perfect, doesn't fit exactly, but it's kind of a stepping stone.
Yeah, so I just thought that'd be fun to show, but it turned out that the world is smarter than I am, and it was a little bit better at that. So aside from that, if we want to get into the true topic of artificial intelligence, we can see examples of this in pop culture and modern references. And this is how artificial intelligence has been portrayed for some years. And what, I guess the people who don't understand exactly what artificial intelligence is, how they think artificial intelligence works. So references in pop culture. First off, Westworld. We talked about this a little bit in the last podcast about binge watching. But the core essence of that series is, well, okay, slight spoiler alert, it's artificial intelligence, and how can we reach the next level of consciousness for artificial intelligence?
Well, and it also touches on, in that show, what does it mean to actually be intelligent? Because they've got these, what did they call them? The visitors were the guests, and the hosts. The hosts were, so that's what they called them, the hosts. Hosts could make their own decisions, but their decisions followed certain guidelines. And they were predictable decisions. So theoretically, it was just a very complex set of sequences that it was following, and they were not actually making their own decision because they had underlying code that was written. But the real question is, when do you know that you have become conscious?
Right, and a lot of that season, I guess the first season, is searching for that spark, or how the AI itself...
The inner voice. The inner voice is what they termed it.
Following the inner voice to find the answer. And there isn't really an answer, and so it keeps it nebulous in that terms. It's a good exploration of what it means to have artificial intelligence and how it can interact with normal humans, right? Mm-hmm. Throughout the entire show, there's always a question in the back of your mind: is this a host? Is that a host? Because in the first episode, you assume that main character is the main character, and you're following his life as he's a human, right? And then at the end of the episode, you're like, wait, hold up a second. And it just flips everything on your head, and then from the rest of the season, that whole thing is questioning in the back of your mind. So, what makes AI conscious, or what makes AI realistic, is explored through Westworld pretty well. What are some other examples in pop culture that we have, Brian?
Well, I know something that you and I both were kind of raised on that had very prominent instances where AI was a cornerstone of the experience, and that was the Halo series of video games. They had Cortana in there, and that was AI that ran a ship, or they could plug it into your suit and helped you become a better warrior, and directed you different places, and helped like unscramble things. But basically what it was like having an extra set of hands, an extra pair of eyes that do all the technical computer stuff, but you didn't actually have that person. It was just an AI. Now, they also brought up the degradation of AIs, and how, similar to like a human, AIs can degrade over time. Now, it might be a longer time, but they still degrade.
Yeah, and so in that instance, basically the plot point of the last few games was that Cortana, the AI that you had been using to help you through the first couple games, first few, I guess you could say, she had been degraded to a point where she was unstable, and you were trying to figure out how to save her because you become attached to her. So, storyline's not important, but realistically, the AI that's helped you so long becomes unstable, and you have to basically learn how to fight her eventually, and she goes insane and tries to take over the galaxy. I think that's where we left off at Halo 5. So right. Yeah, it gets kind of out there and kind of insane. Not unlike Space Odyssey 2000 with HAL, where the AI essentially tries to take you over, right? It's got self-preservation. It wants to survive, and if humans impose rules on that, it's going to do something against you, right? I can't let you do that, Dave, right?
Right. And I guess that's the thing about AI is that we assume... I think the difference between true AI and what a lot of people consider, AI is, like, even if you look at iRobot, a lot of the so originally the robots that, were running around and learning and helping people and stuff like that, they had some sort of intelligence, artificial intelligence to them, but they weren't a true AI. They could be controlled and told to be shut down at any time. Now, a true AI is going to have, because we have created it, is going to have some level of self-preservation, like, Hal from Space Odyssey or Cortana when she started breaking down, because it's in human nature and we're making it in our image. Would you agree with that? Like, is that kind of, what they're getting at there?
We do make AI in our image in the pop culture references, right? So Cortana's made to look like a human in the first place. All of the Westworld hosts are humans. There's not like a nebulous concept of artificial intelligence that's kind of floating through space. I guess in some instances, sure. But yeah, we do make them to reflect our human form and our human problems or, I don't know, misgivings, our character. And so we have those flaws. But self-preservation is obviously one of the most obvious things that can be used by artificial intelligence as a plot point in a lot of pop culture references to basically go rogue, or however they want to say it. It's essentially artificial intelligence is trying to survive in whatever world we give it.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to, I think that the pop culture references can sometimes overtake, like, where we're going. Now, I do agree that pop culture sometimes does direct where we're going. Like, there's that kind of famous one where in Star Trek back in, like, the 80s, I think, they had those little transponders where it was a flip. They, like, flipped out. And then we came up with, the Razor or the flip phones in general. And people point back to say, Star Trek, they did it first. They did that. They had that kind of technology. Whether or not the technology actually existed, they had the model for it, and then we put it into actual use. I think that's what's happening with AI, because we're at a level with AI right now, which we're going to talk about in a second, that is so basic that what we see in pop culture, like Westworld or Halo, or even in Space Odyssey, we're nowhere close to that at this point. But eventually, we probably will get there.
Right, and it's definitely a fantasy world, right? It's a projection of what the future could be, and we tried to kind of reach that pop culture level of fantasy when we do eventually move through the real world to create these artificial intelligence and how it works. And one thing I kind of want to point out is, in any instance of artificial intelligence, it doesn't exist in any context other than the world that us humans create, right? So Westworld probably goes over this the best, which would be where the hosts themselves are the artificial intelligence, and that is the realm which they preside. They can act on our world, they can act on however they want to do, right? Mm-hmm. But they are only within that host, right? That's the artificial intelligence. It's only there. So to move my point further, when we talk about the end of the world and artificial intelligence destroying us all and taking over humans, right?
Terminator.
Yes, just like the Terminator, I guess you could say. It's going to end up being... it's fantasized as if they can act entirely like us humans can, but with the way artificial intelligence is going right now, it's definitely sticking to a more mundane, resource-oriented, actually functional, optimized implementation in the world. So
I guess exactly what you're talking about would be a similar. It's not. I wouldn't call it exactly AI, but it's Amazon's most current solution to AI, and that's
God.
when you turn to your little device on your desktop. You say, "Alexa, can you tell me what the temperature in Anchorage is?" Now, if we really did plan this out, I would have had an Alexa answer here, but we didn't plan this out, and I don't have an Alexa. But that's what current mainstream AI is. Would you agree with that? I mean, we all have it on our phone too.
Yeah,
Siri on Apple, and then Google. I don't know what Google's called. I think it's just Cortana, or I just call it Hey Google. But yeah, so Amazon, Google, Apple, all of these companies have produced some sort of intelligent answering system which you can use in your daily life.
You've been saving that one in your back pocket, haven't you?
I did.
Yeah.
I'm actually pretty proud of that. I really do. I thought about getting an Alexa for that specifically, not because I really want one, but just so that would be great, that I could just surprise you with the recording of it coming back at me.
Yes, that would have been impressive, but you didn't, so ha.
But anyways, no, but it's kind of cool. It's I think that it's more than, you hear all these tech conventions where people are trying to implement artificial intelligence or any other kind of technology, and you don't always see a practical everyday life example. Well, now artificial intelligence isn't just something that you can read about in a book or a magazine or something like that. We're starting to see it sort of be implemented into everyday items that are on the store shelves.
Definitely. I mean, to talk specifically about Amazon, Alexa, or Google, whatever it's called, it kind of mirrors in pop culture the Jarvis from Iron Man, right? It's got this thing on the wall, you walk up to it, and then you talk to it, and it does stuff, right? So it's got this pop culture build off of it, and it's come to our real world. Now, I've seen these little pods that you talk to in your house or whatever, and they don't work perfectly. They're not great.
No.
In my opinion. So it's very rough, very crude. But they're coming out with new editions, new versions, enhanced, I guess, speaker functionality, however they want to call it. Whatever they're doing to make these more marketable products, they're doing it as much as they can. So there's research going into all this stuff, and there's definitely money behind it, which kind of begs the question of where's all the AI actually going to be, right? It's going to be in the corporations, right? Would you see that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you. I think that if anybody's going to create AI, it's not going to be it's going to be for a corporate goal of creating a product, because that I feel like that is how most technology gets started. That's how most technology is created, is they want to sell a product to the masses. And I think that AI is one of those things that, yeah, once we create AI, I'm sure that there's going to be endless military applications, endless medical applications, but it's going to start off as something in your phone or something that you have at home to help you. And it's going to be some company that has a patent on it for 20 years or something like that, so nobody else can do anything with it, that they are able to create. Now, the question is, do you think that it's going to be one of the big companies like Amazon, Google, or Apple? Or do you think it's going to be a brand new company that we haven't even heard of before?
So there are a few players in this game right now, and to go into a couple of them, there's IBM with Watson. You've probably heard of Watson. It's been used everywhere.
They even had I think they had a Super Bowl commercial last year about Watson. So they've made it very public about it.
Yeah, it's everywhere, and it's kind of nebulous what it's used for. I mean, if you say, oh, IBM Watson, you kind of go, oh yeah, it's their artificial intelligence. But you don't know what it does. And so I believe if we look into it, it's actually industrial and business applications where AI is being used to kind of recognize things in industry and business, of course, to enhance and do stuff like that. There's also been IBM versions where it's a chess playing Watson, I believe, and it took on somebody playing chess a while ago and it beat them, and it was all this uproar. But there's also Google. Google has a website. If you go to google.ai, they're going to have basically resources for hardware and software that makes AI relatively open source. You can learn a specific programming language. I think it's called TensorFlow, and you can use that to essentially experiment and run tests and whatever you want to do with AI and however you want to essentially start working with it. I don't know how far that's going to go, and I don't know how open source is going to be, but that's definitely an option. Now, there's also, if we talk about games and chess and the game Go, essentially there's AI, Go, and chess playing computers that have quickly surpassed humans in their capabilities. There was quite some uproar, I think it was over the summer this year, well, past year in 2017, where I believe it was DeepMind or maybe it was Google's AIs. It was someone's AI system that was playing Go against professional players, and I believe it was Korea.
Okay.
And they were essentially getting worked by this AI. It was very taxing and very stressful on the human race, I guess you could say, because we were watching computers beat normal players that were the top of their league and the top of their game. Now, chess is kind of difficult in the first place. Go is, I believe, 10 times more difficult. So it was definitely showing the capability and how we've used AI to kind of surpass human knowledge in some very specific instances. This isn't stuff that having an AI that can beat me at chess isn't going to take over the world or something like that, right?
But that's how it starts. I mean, if you're going to be skeptical about AI and you're going to be cautious about where AI can go, if you see it do one thing, it's going to just steamroll to the next step.
Now, that's where I was going with that point I made earlier about how AI only exists in the form that we create it. And so what I mean by that is, sure, this computer can beat me at chess, but I can unplug it and turn it off.
That's true. And I will say, I mean, if only they knew that in Terminator, we could have just saved the entire 4 or 5 films, and Arnold Schwarzenegger could have just stopped, coming back for more. We would have never heard "I'll be back," but they could just unplug. What's the main console called?
Skynet or whatever it is.
Skynet, yeah. Just unplug Skynet. Don't worry, just unplug it. I think they tried to unplug it at some point, and it didn't work. But that's another. That's another movie that we could go into at another point. But I think that you're right. I think that we can probably create it whatever we want to. But I think one of the human, I guess you could call it issues, and we have this with a lot of different technologies and a lot of different research paths. We do things without thinking about the implications sometimes.
Yeah, this is the, we can save him, but can we, or should we, or whatever?
Should we, yeah.
Yes.
Did you ever stop to ask yourself, should you do this?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, it's a very, you never know what you're going to do in the situation until you actually get to that point. But, that kind of goes more into the existential side of everything. And, you can even start thinking about what does it mean to be human versus what does it mean to have artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, we have it so that it can do, calculations. We have it so that it can make decisions in stressful situations like chess or like playing games. But does it have emotion? If it beats someone, is it excited? Is it happy?
So, Brian, what would you define as your spark that makes you human? Now, this is a tough question, so take your time with it. But
I actually think it's emotion.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because scientists cannot, they know what hormones make people happy and what make people sad, but they cannot, make it in a laboratory setting. They cannot make happiness in a laboratory setting. They can introduce a hormone that, makes people feel happy or makes people feel sad, but they can't hold the physical happiness. And I think that until we understand that, we'll never be able to replicate it.
Okay, that's fair enough. I would say it has something more to do with what we don't know. And, that's kind of, I'm getting extremely existential here. I'm saying we don't understand ourselves what it means to be truly human. So how could we possibly create a artificial intelligence that replicates us perfectly, because we don't even know what we are perfectly, right?
Yeah, and I think that what's going to end up happening is that we stumble across artificial intelligence, because you're right. We don't know how we work. We don't know how our brains work. I think I saw something one time that said that we know more about, the stars in the sky than we know about our own brains. Like, people are, they call people, like, there's always that joke. You don't have to be a neuroscientist to be able to figure out or something, or you don't have to be a neurosurgeon or something like that. Like,
brain surgeon.
The reason they say those things is because while those people have studied their entire lives to do that job, or that is their, calling, where they just study that all day, every day for their entire lives, they still know so little about the human brain, or any brain for that matter. How memories are formed, how memories are made, like how memories are kept, like all of those things. We don't know how that works. We have guesses, we have hypotheses, but there's no way for us at this point to be able to give a definitive answer.
Now, are you assuming that we can't possibly replicate consciousness?
I think that we can, but I don't think it's going to happen on purpose. I think that with like a lot of great scientific discoveries and scientific achievements, we were going to be looking for something else and stumble upon a path that leads us to true consciousness. I think that it's going to be achievable at some point. I don't personally think that it's going to happen in our lifetime.
Now, okay, let's draw the line in the sand here. Are you a skeptic for artificial intelligence, or are you, I guess you could say, for artificial intelligence?
I think that artificial intelligence has a place in our society, because I think that if you could program emotions, like if you could have artificial intelligence take emotions out of artificial intelligence, then you could probably make more important decisions in a better, in a more fair, faster, and efficient manner than any human could do.
Okay, so you're pro artificial intelligence.
In certain applications.
All right, so you're basically like Mark Zuckerberg in essence here.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
What about you? Are you on the fence? Like, do you want artificial intelligence, or are you similar to Elon Musk, where you're terrified of it?
I would say I'm in the middle. I am okay with artificial intelligence because it has amazing things that it can do, but you have to be careful with it, right? There's malicious intent behind everything. So if you end up running into the mad scientist in his backyard making artificial intelligence just to destroy the world, then yeah, I don't want that. But I'm totally okay with using artificial intelligence to make our lives better. And there's a lot of ways it can do that. So for the moment, I'm leaning more towards pro-artificial intelligence, but I understand that we have to kind of look at it critically. And how we're going to do that, I don't know. There's probably no way us humans are going to be able to actually critically look at artificial intelligence and make the best decision on the situation. So
yeah, I think that that's something that we won't be able to, like, for instance, you and I could be pro artificial intelligence right now, or leaning towards that side of onto that like team. But once artificial intelligence comes here and is in our daily lives, we could find a major flaw that nobody had actually thought of before until it's been implemented.
Exactly. So, we're in the middle, I guess you could say. We're not entirely let's go, but whatever. So Stephen Hawking is basically a pessimist. Bill Gates is a pessimist. Elon Musk is a pessimist. I'm saying pessimist as in meaning they don't want AI at all. But we're on the terms of, I guess you could say, Steve Wozniak or Larry Page or even Mark Zuckerberg. So we've got allies either way.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that I think for the past 15 years or so, while we have we've improved the technology that we've had, we haven't come up with anything new. Like, there hasn't been the next computer or the next phone. Like, yeah, a smartphone is basically them just merging a computer and a phone together. It's not like we've improved on things, but we haven't opened up a brand new avenue. I think artificial intelligence is that new avenue. That might be that next technological revolution. And that's where we can probably improve. Like, the things that we learn from creating artificial intelligence will probably have applications in areas of our lives that don't have artificial intelligence.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I think that for the human race, like, we just need to keep everything moving forward, and I think that artificial intelligence is a good way to, keep the ball rolling, keep everybody's wheels turning, and looking for the next big thing. Now, I did read an article, and this is going to be kind of sketchy because this was just when I was like browsing at night one night about artificial intelligence. So forgive me if I'm wrong about this, but there's a group of people out there that say the only way that we can create a true artificial intelligence is if computers themselves create the intelligence. Now, what I mean by that is that if you've got a group of 10 scientists who are working on the artificial intelligence, and each of them are working on a certain aspect of the artificial intelligence, they would argue that those scientists are imparting some of their, what they assume should be rules for artificial intelligence onto their sections.
So you're saying to make artificial intelligence properly, we have to have computers talk to one another and figure it out for themselves?
Sort of. The way that they described it was basically setting up a system of computers that would teach an artificial intelligence rules. So, like, basically you start with a blank slate, but you've got 40 or 50 computer teachers that are teaching it, and then this artificial intelligence, this base core blank slate, is going to learn and start to create its own identity. And if we do it that way, then there's no human interaction directly with the core base blank slate. And that's when we can truly start to talk about artificial intelligence. Now, again, this was kind of an off-the-wall article that I read, and I didn't see anything else about it. But I thought it was a interesting perspective that while there's a lot of mainstream ways that we're tackling the artificial intelligence problem, there are some, fringe ideas out there that people might be looking into as well. So we might not see them in, the mainstream articles in the newspapers or from the bigger companies, but that's a possibility that artificial intelligence could first be created from one of these fringe ideas.
That's a very cool way to think of it, Brian. But let's go into last call. Give us your final thought.
So I guess my final thought is that we don't know. I think that's how we can sum up almost all of this. We don't know what artificial intelligence is going to look like. We don't know what applications it is going to have in our daily lives. We don't know what or when it's going to come. What we do know is that, and I feel pretty safe saying this, I don't think an artificial intelligence will ever be able to enjoy this beer like I've enjoyed it during this podcast. And again, I'm drinking the honeyed one by High Hops, and it's delicious. So, Greg, when you come out here, we're definitely going to have to go grab a pint of this. Or a schooner.
A schooner.
As they say.
We're going to go get a schooner of High Hops.
We're going to get a schooner at High Hops. But yeah, no, I think that's one of the biggest things, that there's certain, that's my final, this is my true final thought. There are certain things that artificial intelligence will just not be able to do. Tastes, smells, stuff like that. We can, help program them that. Theoretically, I'm sure they didn't really talk about it in Westworld, but it made it seem like all of the hosts had some kind of sensory system. But I just think that, they're not going to be able to be up to the par that humans are. So, Greg, that was mine, but what are your final thoughts?
Okay, so my final thought is that talking about artificial intelligence while drinking beer is a dangerous, dangerous task, and you're always going to end up fantasizing about taking over the world with artificial intelligence. Because this Lip Lock Cherry Stout is fabulous, and I finished it really quick, and I got a little bit of buzz going on. So that's my beer review, I guess you could say. But anyways, artificial intelligence, I think it's helpful. It's going to save the world. It's going to make the world a better place. People are going to be afraid of it at first, but we just got to accept our overlords, man. I know this is probably a little bit different than the position I took not too long ago about being in the middle of the road. I'm just saying, what are we going to do to stop them? If we already create them, there's nothing we can do. And if it really gets that bad, just pull the plug, right?
Exactly. And you know that they're going to eventually look back on this podcast while they're like, doing research to take over the world. And they're going to see that we both agreed that our overlords, our AI overlords are awesome. And they're going to look and have a great, they're going to let us off really easily.
Yeah, that's the thing.
The revolution.
We got to put in a good word with the AI man and have him let us off with just a slap on the wrists.
Exactly. We're getting prepared for that right now.
Yes, exactly. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us on this 8th episode of the Broken Speaker Podcast. Check out all of our content on our blog at www.brokenspeakerpodcast.com. And from us to you, have a good one. Cheers.